Welcome to Draw and Brawl, the podcast where art and MMA go hand in hand. What's up, guys? I'm Dave. This is Ben. We are coming at you live on this sunny Monday afternoon. We are the Draw and Brawl podcast, here to talk about all things art and MMA. So, first things first, obviously, Saturday, we had UFC. Right, exactly. Yeah. Kind of a crazy start time. I'm not used to watching main events at like 1:30 in the afternoon Eastern, but they were in Abu Dhabi, so a couple hours ahead of us, just a few. So I know you want to go over a couple things. Let's get right to it. So first and foremost, we're going over Khabib and Poirier.
Oh yeah, of course. You gotta go start with the big one first, of course. So yeah, Khabib continuing his dominance, submitting Poirier in the third round in dominant fashion. Now 28-0.
Yeah.
Just ever more adding to his legacy, man.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things. We had talked about this fight beforehand, and I'd always kind of said that, obviously, it's what do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? I always kind of thought it was going to go along the lines of the McGregor fight, just because I feel like Poirier and Khabib, that matchup is very similar to McGregor and Khabib, maybe just less of a threat on the feet. I mean, it pretty much went down the same way. Almost the same submission.
I think compared to the Conor fight, this was way tougher. It was a more adversity that Khabib faced, and versus the Conor fight. I mean, I think out of all his fights, this is the most adversity he's faced. They were
definitely standing up for a while. There was some good exchanges between them on the feet, but at the end of the day, Khabib is not going to exchange with anybody on the feet, and he's going to do exactly what he did, which is shoot for the takedowns.
He wanted to, so he wanted to prove his stand up. But Javier Mendez, which is the head coach of AKA, Daniel Cormier's coach, all them. He was saying in the corner, your dad's plan, and his dad's plan, because his dad was also in the corner. Khabib's was take it to the ground. But Khabib really wanted to prove himself in there a little bit. And in that second round, even though Khabib still took control, but when it was standing up on the feet, Poirier was getting some of that success, and it looked like he was getting close to like rocking him a bit. He was backpedaling, but of course that's just him being smart too. I mean, Khabib he just wants to prove himself a lot, so it's awesome to see that. But I think the most adversity we saw him in was specifically when in the third round with the guillotine choke.
Yeah. When literally right before the finish.
Yeah, what Dustin threw up. And it looked pretty tight and close, and even Khabib can back it up and say that it was close. But yeah, that was a crazy fight. I mean, he weathered the storm of Khabib and took dominance in that third round, and it was a tired out Poirier. Like he not only was he tired out through all those rounds, but then when he was squeezing on that choke, just tired out his arms completely. So it was one and done there after the choke let out.
I agree. Well, I mean, I think the big thing to keep in mind too is Poirier is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. This is not some guy who's uncomfortable on his back, uncomfortable on the ground. It just goes to show you how good Khabib is, how smothering he is. That's the one thing I kept thinking of watching the fight is he's just smothering. I think Poirier even shouted to his corners, like, I can't get him the fuck off me. So he had a really hard time. But that's kind of the thing too, that guillotine that he had in. I think he kind of knew it was a position that I got to try to end this now, or this might be the only opportunity I have. Put everything he had into that choke. And by the time that Khabib popped his head out, Dustin's arms were absolutely gone. He couldn't defend the grip, couldn't defend, any of the wrist control. He couldn't get out of it. And that was literally right at the end. But I think the biggest thing that I wanted to address, obviously the end of the fight, Khabib jumped the fence again, albeit for an entirely different reason. But it is nice to see, because Khabib did get a bad rap. I don't want to get into another philosophical debate, but there's a lot of differences in the character of McGregor and Khabib, religious, they're polar opposites in every possible way. So it was nice to see that, as much of a bad kind of taste in people's mouths that Khabib might have, we might have had about Khabib from that last fight, what he was able to do with Dustin to show that mutual respect, swapping shirts just like they do on the on the football pitch, soccer for anybody else. It was really cool to
Mhm.
see that, and then him to say that he's going to donate, he's going to sell the shirt, donate all the money to Dustin's
Oh,
charity. That's kind of like now I'm not a huge Habib fan. I never really have been, but that was so awesome to see, and it makes me feel good about the sport because if that's what the focus can be, it pushes the whole kind of thing away from the antics of the McGregors and all that other kind of stuff. Like, really, the only issue Habib had with Poirier before the fight was that they were saying it was champion versus champion, and he was like, "No, I'm the champion.
yeah.
He's the interim champion." But it's nice that when you can watch a fight, there's so many things. It's an amazing thing about fighting is people are coming from so many different backgrounds, religions, ethnic groups, countries, everything. And at any given point, it could really be a hotbed where it just takes a little bit of a spark, and all of a sudden things could explode, like we saw with Habib and McGregor. But it's nice to see the exact opposite. Two guys that are extremely opposites in their life, but they can come together, have mutual respect, and it just made me feel good. It made me feel like, you know what, maybe you can have a high profile fight. Maybe you can do this kind of stuff and then not have some catastrophic result at the end of it.
Yeah, man. I mean, they you see respect in the cage a lot, hugging it out or just saying a tweet,
Sure.
or posting something online, giving a message to the fighter and being like, that was a great fight. Like, you're a warrior, da da da. But this took it to another level wherein you find somebody that's running a foundation like Poirier and Habib's then it's like, all right, well, I have a big following. A lot of people have here are seeing this event. I'm gonna, since you weren't able to win and say your message, because after every time he fights Poirier, he always announces, what he's fighting for, not just for his family and the cage and
Sure.
this and that. He's fighting to raise money and awareness and shit like that. So um, it was amazing to see Habib do that, and he's going to be auctioning off that shirt, I guess, on online and whatnot. And then I hear Dana White, at the post press fight conference, saying he'll match whatever Habib makes, with that money,
That's awesome.
and
That's
that's
awesome.
also really cool. Like, the president is doing that too.
Man, how can you not like
Um,
Dustin Poirier? Like, how can you not like this guy?
Okay. Yes, I wanted to touch up on a lot of him. Like, dude, win or lose, always a champion in my eyes. Like, I've seen it come up, and it's truly an inspiring thing to witness. What he's been through, and just a guy coming
Mm-hmm.
from a small, town or whatnot in Louisiana. Like, it's really remarkable to see just guys like that, work their way up to the top. And like I said, win or lose, like since his WEC days, like his debut in WEC was his first pro loss, and like of course, it made him sad and da da da, but like he
Mm-hmm.
handled it like a champ. And any loss you see him, and even the McGregor fight, he shook
Mm-hmm.
McGregor's hand, but you can see that he's
Sure.
always respectful. In that McGregor fight with him, it was the most
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the
riled up
most
he's ever
vocal, like
been.
ready to kill someone I've ever seen him. But McGregor has a way of doing that to people.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to give it up for him. And now Dustin is, you know, he made a video after the fight. I guess back in his hotel.
Sure.
Emotional
I mean, he
video,
was
of
super
course.
emotional even,
In
yeah,
full.
in a post-fight interview, right, in the octagon.
Yeah, that too. And he's saying, he's unsure about returning back to the cage. And of course, I think that's kind of like
Sure.
in the moment type of thing where I really don't think he's gonna retire. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure he's
Well, he
gonna
even
come
said in
back
the
to the
post-fight
cage.
interview too, he's like, I still got a lot of tread left on the tires. So, but it's like what we saw with
Yeah,
DC too. I mean, it's a little different
yeah.
because DC's
When
obviously, he's 40, but
on his way out.
it's the same kind of thing. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like we've seen a kind of slow, steady decline from them where it's, yeah, this could be like Bisping, for example. Love Michael Bisping, but towards the end, you could see like, yeah, I could see him kind of wanting to wrap it up. Same thing with Henderson and stuff, and it's nice to kind of, I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, I think we're kind of seeing a different just focus on fighters too. Whereas the fighters that have done pretty well for themselves financially have been kind of pretty responsible in the sense that we're not seeing guys fighting till 40, till 38 anymore. I mean, guys can kind of retire a little earlier
Oh
and
yeah.
and do some things.
I love that. Like, I'm loving to see all these fighters being like entrepreneurs in a sense. They're like really finding out like different business opportunities and careers
Good for the
outside of
sport.
fighting while they're still fighting too. It's great to see that. And with back to Poirier, if he ever does decide to retire, and this is a fun note to add, is that he's all about cooking.
Yes.
And if you followed it, like his like embedded stuff and the things he's been saying in interviews, like just those little things that that
Right.
doesn't make the news, but he's all about cooking, and he eventually wants to actually like host a
I'd
show
watch it.
like on the Travel Network or yeah, so he wants to have like a food show where he goes to places and tries food. I think it was either between food fight or dinner dinner with the diamond or something. But yeah, I mean, I really hope that comes true for him. Yeah, man, that'd be freaking amazing. Like that'd be awesome for a guy like that,
Sure.
and he deserves it. And that's what I like. I said, just all these fighters, there's so many, so many opportunities for
Sure.
them post fight
Well,
career.
so it's over. I mean, it was pretty convincing. Is I think it was as good as a main event you could ask for. But the big question is always, obviously, we know what's next for Habib, and it's the fight that I think a lot of people have wanted to see for a
No,
long time. So, what are your thoughts on Habib
there's no
Ferguson?
question. Oh my God, fifth time's the
No
charm, right?
shit.
I think it's either the fifth or sixth time. Like they're gonna book this
We've
fight.
been just tipped 4 times with this fight, so I think it's about time that they actually. Well, let's. I mean, listen, it's great, but you know what? I'm excited about it, but I'm not going to be that excited about it until they're in the cage sitting across from each other. That's what makes me most excited.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been that. I've started to have to put myself in that mindset too. Is like it's hard for me to really get excited until I see them in the cage. But I think when I really get excited is when it's like a week before because they're doing all the embeddeds, the interviews. And I'm getting pumped up. By the time it's the fight, I'm kind of like sometimes I'm still super pumped, but
Yeah,
then sometimes I'm just kind of like mellowed out. Like the whole excitement was
yeah,
just there, and now I'm just watching a fight. Like the build up, I sometimes can be almost
sure.
more exciting in some ways. But no, but the with Habib and Ferguson, man, I think Ferguson, no doubt, is now going to be the toughest and most competitive
I
fighter
100%
and
agree with
fight
you.
for
I don't
Habib.
think anybody has ever fought like Tony. That guy, just the stuff that you see him do, he'll pull out. Whereas you just don't see that.
Yeah.
You don't see a front
Oh
flip
my
into a
God.
fucking spinning back fist. You just don't see that. Total unorthodox style.
Yeah. There's like no other. It's crazy. I mean, that's such an exciting one, it's even hard for me to put into words how huge of a fight that is. But I think
Yeah.
now that's the biggest fight you can make.
And I know it's early and everything else, but I've always liked Tony in that fight. I've always liked Tony just because he's so unpredictable. I mean, obviously, I
Oh
don't know. I
yeah,
feel like he would. It's hard to see or hard to say if he would fare any better on the ground against Habib because Habib just has a way of mauling people and smothering people. But at the same
hmm
token, I don't think that Habib has really fought anybody who's as unorthodox as Tony Ferguson and has such a wide range of just an arsenal. I mean, his arsenal is kind of
that,
is so unique.
that's the biggest advantage for Ferguson is that his
You
unorthodox
don't know
type of
what.
style, it surprises. Never know what he's going to be doing. So I think that's going to be really really interesting to see how it plays with Habib. And like those moments and between Poirier and Habib, where with the chokes and stuff like that, I think you put Ferguson in that position, and he's going to secure that choke. Like there's a chance he gets that, but I mean, like then I just want to see how Habib will fight someone like that because I'm not saying like Habib overlooked Poirier, like he knew he wasn't going to be in danger. I mean he said something about like he kind of gave him Poirier that choke so he could just tire himself out type of thing, and then get his dominance or whatnot. But I think you're not going to see
The
Habib
thing
do that to
too is
Ferguson.
that everybody that fights Habib, how can you not have a little bit of fear when you're standing across from a guy that's mauled the people the way that he's mauled them? That's the thing about Tony Ferguson is he has no fear. He has no fear of Khabib, what Khabib's done, what Khabib's going to do. He is not going to be afraid to throw whatever he wants to throw. Kind of like the John Jones thing that we've always talked about. When people stand in front of John Jones, their game plan totally becomes defensive. They're counterpunchers, essentially. Ferguson is not going to be a counterpuncher. He's going to execute what he wants to execute against Khabib without any fear of what Khabib's going to do. Like even the first round when when Poirier threw that front kick, Khabib kind of caught it a little bit. Poirier adjusted his game plan. He's like, oh, well, I'm not going to really try to do that again because I'm trying to avoid that takedown. Whereas Ferguson is going to do whatever he thinks to do at that moment without any hesitation, without any kind of change up at all.
Absolutely.
So it makes him super dangerous.
The two about those guys, Ferguson and Khabib, they both have such strong mental game, and they're never really going in that cage with that pressure and fear. So, oh my God. I mean, like, well, okay, I'll say this. Khabib actually admitted, in that press conference saying, I had a little pressure coming in. And it was because, before he had no pressure, but when he got to the octagon, that's when it was like, oh, he really felt it because he was really kind of in his like home area a little bit. I mean, like, where not really his home, but like where a lot of his family could come because he's been fighting in the U.S. so much that his dad wasn't able to be in his corner. All his family and friends.
Pressure does to people. Look at the Gustafsson fight versus Rumble. It was one of those things where literally, if he would have won that fight, he would have been in line for a title shot and got knocked out. That pressure, I think, really makes it's totally different than any other sport. Whereas other sports like that home field advantage, you have that benefit. Whereas I feel like it's worse for fighters because now it's this extra pressure on top of being in a fight.
Yeah, and it kind of makes Khabib more human to hear that, like, oh, he actually felt an ounce of pressure.
Stone Cold, like he's like the classic old school, like Cold War Stone Cold Russian. You know what I mean? Like, don't just like he's basically like Ivan Drago from Rocky. He's like, if he dies, he dies. It's like
sure. It's great, yeah. But
you can't say that about that fight. You really can't.
I wonder where you can't have that fight. I wonder where. Say again.
Saying you can't say enough about that fight.
Oh yeah. What's cool about the two is they're both on 12 fight winning streaks, but with Khabib, he's on a 12-0 winning streak, and he's tied with Anderson Silva. Because when they made their debuts into the UFC, they now both went on a 12 winning streak, but now of course Anderson has gotten some losses, but I feel Khabib. Now I want to say what's even after Tony. I want to say this. I'm saying if Khabib can beat Tony, that would make him 29-0 in his professional record, but then on a 13 fight win streak in the octagon. What I'm saying is, I think the only fight that would make sense, and he's trying to end this at Khabib's thinking about retiring by like 32. So I'm thinking like the matchup they need to make now, if he beats Tony, is GSP, the ring fight. I think it's the perfect way to end his legacy. Khabib all about the legacy right there, and if he gets that fight with GSP, let's say I'm just all favoring Khabib right now just to build up the story. Is like he beats GSP 14-0 in the octagon with an overall 30-0 record. Like that's historic. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I love GSP. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. But I mean, dude, honestly, do we really want to see 39, maybe 40-year-old GSP at the time versus a prime Khabib?
How old is he right now?
GSP's 38.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think GSP
since 2013. If this was like 2010, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't know, man. It's like I don't know. On paper, in 2010, it's a great fight. In reality, I mean, what are we putting this out at? He's going to fight Ferguson, so that's not going to happen until next year. So,
Well, I don't know about that. I think there's a chance that could happen in December before the new year.
All right, so say it happens in December. So we're at least a year out from a GSP fight. Does GSP?
Sure.
This is the thing, though. Does GSP even want to come back and fight?
He does. He's been saying in recent interviews that he wants that fight. His team pushed for it, knocking on Dana's door. But then again, you make a good point. Like if it's going to be a year from now, maybe GSP is like, no, never mind. I don't want it now.
I don't know, man. I just kind of feel like why? If you're GSP, why? Your legacy.
He wants to be a 3-time champion, man. The first. Yeah.
I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know.
He's about legacy too, and I think it sets up for a good fight. And I'll say this: Dana White was, of course, turned down that fight when it was trying to be.
He said sure. Like Habib wants GSP. He said sure.
Yeah, he said that in the post fight conference. I mean, but he said it. He said it. He didn't say it like in a bad way, like sure. But he was kind of like, yeah, sure. I mean, if the stars line, I think Dana is going to give him Habib that fight if he gets through Ferguson. I know he probably wants that McGregor rematch, and we don't really need to touch up on that a lot. But I know he said, well, if Tony declines the fight, with Habib, then McGregor will make sense.
All right, so let's actually get into that then, because obviously after the fight, McGregor was super quick to tweet his response or his opinion, and then Gaethje was quick to respond with what he thought. So we have a huge fight coming up this weekend with Cowboy and Gaethje. But before we get into that, let us touch upon the ever-present, even though he hasn't fought besides twice in 100 years, Conor McGregor. I don't know, man. Here's my thing, right? As much as I would love to see a Habib McGregor rematch, do we really care at this point?
I don't really need to see
That's
that.
what I'm saying. I
think I'm saying this, and we've talked about this, personally, separate from the pod, and talking about like, it could be inevitable that he comes back anyway. So it's for McGregor. So I mean, like, we're gonna have our eyes are gonna be glued to it anyway. So, but I don't think that immediate rematch should be happening. I think if we want to touch up a little bit on Cerrone and Gaethje, it's the winner of that I feel could deserve Conor, because they were both somewhat promised, or in line for that fight. Anyway, they were trying to match that up, and then it fell through. But with Conor, but I think there's a lot of other matchups for Conor. I mean, like you could even say Dustin Poirier versus Conor. I mean, if I wasn't even thinking about that much after this event. I wasn't really thinking, okay, what's next for Poirier? Usually, I'm like always kind of like thinking about, okay, what's next for the loser in the fight, da da da. But this one I really didn't think about. But now I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, that could make sense. That would be a really good fight, and Dustin deserves that big payday too, and that rematch. Poirier can get that one back too. But yeah, man. Like I said, I just think for how Habib's direction is going right now, I really think it's two more fights, and it's Tony and possibly GSP or somebody else. But I think for him, if he wants that last fight, he wants to be for legacy. There's a chance we see him match up with Conor again, but I just really think the direction he's going, and when he's on his way out, I think he's going to have his say a little bit, where it's like, this is my last fight, GSP, big money,
I honestly don't think that a McGregor-Habib rematch is a good idea, because there's no way that this, I feel like, ends in any other way other than what the first fight ended like. And it's such a stain for the sport. I could see possibly McGregor getting Ferguson. If Ferguson beats Habib, I think they could make that fight. But I honestly, I really don't know. I don't know what – I think it's a combination of not really caring, just because I'm so kind of just over talking about him and having nothing to do with fighting. We've talked more about him and things that go on outside of the ring than we have talked about him inside the ring. And I just kind of feel like at this point I'm just tired of it. I've defended that guy for years as a fighter, and then just to kind of, I don't want to get into a whole big thing, but I'm just not really that impressed. If he wants to fight, great, but it is whatever. There's other fights that I'm really so much more interested in that are happening to really kind of worry about the hypotheticals of what fight to make or what fight should we make or this or that.
And I'm thinking that fight that we're really looking forward to next.
Oh, I know what that fight is.
Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal.
That is the BMF championship match of the world.
Both guys that were trying to maybe get that fight with Conor, and now they're just also moving on from it. They're like, hey, you're a waste of time right now. Let's fight each other.
And I'll tell you, in all honesty, I would much rather see Diaz Masvidal than Diaz Conor or Masvidal Conor.
Absolutely. And man, for the people that don't know, well, you should know, they're headlining Madison Square Garden.
Chance that you know.
Yeah, in November. Now, this is what I want to touch up before we, talk about Diaz and Masvidal. Is that, of course, after Colby's fighting Lawler, he, in knockdown was saying, hey, let's fight on that card, MSG in November. And now, we were thinking, okay, well, Usman and Colby Covington were going to be originally booked to headline that card. So there's a lot of rumors coming into this. I think, supposedly one of the rumors was that, it didn't get booked to headline MSG because Covington wasn't going to be paid the money he wants for that fight. One thing I did hear from Dana in the post-fight press conference for UFC 242 is that he offered both of those guys fights, but they didn't jump on it. When he said he said it emphasis on fights. Kind of big. So I didn't know if I don't know if he was talking about like matching those guys two up or like other fights. I know Masvidal even made a tweet thinking if a Diaz fight was going to work, hey, let's you and me Usman fight. So maybe there was stuff like that, but I don't know. Like maybe I just misheard him right there, but or he missaid that. But there was a lot of he said she said about this fight, and it's really unfortunate when a logical fight like that can't be put together with Usman and Covington. So I don't know when that's going to happen. What's happening? What are your thoughts on that not coming to fruition?
I don't know. At first, I thought Usman was hurt. So I was like, okay, maybe he's got some injury. I thought he was hurt from before and he wasn't fighting, but I could be wrong. I don't know, man. I really, when Dana gives those ambiguous answers, it's kind of hard to know exactly what's kind of going on because there's a lot of time, like even for example, the Cyborg stuff, Cyborg's camp and her saying one thing, Dana and the UFC are saying something totally different. So it's kind of always hard to know exactly what's going on. I mean, it's a fight I'd like to see. I'd love to see that fight, but at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things where we can't get too caught up in talking about fights that should have happened that didn't happen, just because we could do an entire podcast about that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like we never know also what's going on in scenes all the time, especially when it involves money. So like you don't know, maybe Covington had the price he was shooting out was deserved. These guys are putting their lives on the line all too, and it's a big title fight. They deserve the bucks, but this is a line that I stole from Ferguson. But money talks and bullshit walks, and hey. So, like I said, we just don't know what the prices were said there. So, but all in all, the UFC got a good card right here with Nate Diaz and Masvidal headlining. Now the fans got a 5-rounder. The UFC has the pay-per-view. They're getting money from it. I mean, it's big. I mean, that's and now they're fighting for a fucking belt. Dana says they're making a belt. Like, this is crazy.
That's like the one thing that they've done that I'm like, this is awesome. Usually it's like, oh, what are they doing? No, they just screwed this person or whatever, but it's the BMF belt. I can't believe that's happening, and I'm so excited for it. I hope they make replicas because I'm going to buy one.
Oh, yeah, like the UFC, they're on their store. They'll sell those. They'll sell, like, the belts on there. That'd be crazy. I wonder what this is actually going to look like. At first, when I heard Dana said, oh, yeah, we're going to make one. He said it in this first interview announcing the fight. And it was before the UFC 242. And then he says in the post-fight conference and confirming it and other stuff where he's like, yeah, we're making a belt. I was like, holy shit, they're actually going to make a belt. But he said, this is the only exception for these two guys. It's not going to be like whoever fights the winner of that fight gets the belt. Like, this is one and done just for these two guys. It's
which is
pretty
what it
cool.
should
But
be.
I mean, how about that fight, man? We talked about
I
it. We talked.
we talked about it this week, and I said that this is the fight that I'm the most excited
Mhm.
about above any other fight, above a Cormier fight, above Jones
Yeah,
Cormier,
yeah,
above
yeah.
Jones versus the Undertaker at WrestleMania. I don't care about any fight except the Masvidal Diaz fight. I don't care who wins this fight. I don't have any real skin in the game. I guess if anything, maybe I'd kind of be on the Diaz side of things. But I really just am looking forward
Right.
to a full 5 round fight with these two
Yeah,
guys. Ah, man, it's literally like
yeah. I
it's
mean,
it excites
it's
me. It
hard
really
to
does.
kind of
I
like analyze this fight. It's going to be. We don't even know what can happen in this one. It's just it's such a crazy one. What I want to say is, yes. What I was
be a
going to say
war is
about
what
this
it's going
one
to
was
be.
like my thoughts after Diaz announced that at 241, like, hey, I want that fight. He was fighting the 3 rounder of Pettis, and you saw he fought the third round, the first round, like the third round in a fifth round fight. He's used to putting himself in a fifth round fight
Right.
and not tiring himself out. Well, he tired himself out much quicker in that third round fight with Pettis. So I was kind of like, well, shit, if they put this as a co-main for MSG, if Kamaru and Kobe were going to headline, then it would most likely be a 3 rounder. And I was like, well, how's that going to go? They're going to make this a fight night, but they're the PPV, making that they get their money out of it, the UFC. So now like it's kind of been really crafted perfectly that these guys are headlining, and now we're seeing the 5 round where we're seeing Nate Diaz at his best. And like shit, if this goes all 3 rounds or goes for the first 3 rounds, and no one got the finish, we got another 2 rounds to go to see like what else is going to go on in this fight. That's what's crazy about like 5 rounds fights is like that finish can come in that very last round. So
Sure.
yeah, I'm excited about this. Like this, it's weird how this kind of came together where they're headlining the fucking PPV, like and
Yeah,
5 rounds.
it's
And like I said, we're gonna see Diaz at his best right there with the 5 rounds.
well, I mean, here's the thing about this fight, right? So this is a fight that's really a spectacle fight
Mhm.
in a lot of ways because they're making a belt for it. But at the end of the day, these guys are the third and sixth ranked welterweights too. So not for nothing, whoever wins this fight could have a legitimate kind of a request or a shot at wanting to face the winner of a Covington Usman fight for
Absolutely,
the belt too. So this isn't
absolutely.
one of those things where it's like, oh, this is just a fun kind of backyard barbecue fight that doesn't have any implications. Like this could be a very important fight for both of them, which is kind of nice because not that either of them needed extra motivation to want to get in the cage and beat the shit out of somebody, but to know for like Nate Diaz, you beat Jorge Masvidal, you could potentially have an open door shot at the champ too,
I feel
especially at 34 years old. I mean, I don't know how many more chances he's going to have, and he's never really. I mean, I'd love for him to hold the belt. I really would. So
Yeah, man. I mean, can you think of any other contenders right now that would be fighting for the belt? I mean,
well, I
well,
mean, it's different. You have
I feel like
so
we were all saying before Nate Diaz returned that like, hey, Jorge should be next. I mean, a lot of people were saying, I didn't even know he was 2-2 in his last four. I think it's not even about the record sometimes or where you are in the ranking. It's like the excitement you bring. It's really
exactly.
it's been about that for a long time now. So we were
Well, I mean, you figure it out this way, right? So if you look at the welterweight division, Woodley, who knows what he's really wants to do? I mean, you have Covington, Masvidal, Dos Anjos. I mean, nobody's really coming off wins except for Covington. You have, Thompson, Wonderboy. He's coming off obviously that loss to
yeah,
Pettis. You have Askren, and Maya. Those two guys. I mean, Robbie Lawler. Like, who do you really have in this division that
exactly,
you can make a title shot fight, a title shot with besides Masvidal or Diaz at this point? That's
exactly.
going to bring anybody there. Um,
And it could have been Pettis because he, beat Thompson, but then when Diaz beat Pettis,
yeah,
and
it's
Masvidal's gone on that just tearing through, beating Till,
I
and
mean, I think Masvidal is the most impressive just until the knockouts of Till and the knockout of Askren. I mean, like that guy. I think that's the thing too. Is you and I had talked about it, and we were kind of thinking, yeah, Masvidal's probably next in line for a shot. It's pretty much Covington and then Masvidal,
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
minds of the matchmakers. But the fact that Masvidal was like, yeah, man, I'm down for this Diaz fight. I think that's kind of the difference, because if Masvidal was like, well, hey, I should be fighting for the belt, I don't really want this fight, would have been a lot different. But the fact that he's willing to take that fight, I can't help but think, especially with the state of the division. And I mean, you look at the top 8 guys and just the losses that they piled up as far as the big names. I really see that whoever wins this fight is the next challenger.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think they're going to do a an Usman Woodley 2. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it hasn't even really been discussed. And I think at the end of the day, whoever walks away with the belt from that Covington Usman is a really good fight for either Diaz or Masvidal. So I feel like you have 2 fights that either outcome is going to be a really good third fight, for the belt, if that's how it ends up happening.
Right. I mean, like, Jorge was like, yeah, it's either that title shot or a money fight. And the money fight originally was going to be, Conor. But it's the same reason Dustin.
But does anybody really want to see McGregor at welterweight? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I can't even get into that. I just want to say this. It's the same reason Dustin accepted that Diaz fight when, he could be getting that title shot, whatnot. But it was kind of like, hey, that's a history fight right there. That's a historical fight. Like, that's a fucking gangster fight. Like, I don't want to end my career without, letting that slide. So same thing with Masvidal. He's like, hell yeah. Like, I'll set aside my, debate if I should have the title or not, like fight for the title or not. So it's like, yeah, I'll fucking take that fight. So
yeah, I'll tell you one thing. The one fight that I'm just kind of thinking of now that I'd like to see is if Askren gets past Maia. I would like to see like a Ben Askren Stephen Thompson fight. That fight does intrigue me.
Okay,
it really does.
That could be interesting
because I feel like they both need a win. Even if Askren beats Maia, they still need some wins. But it is what it is. The welterweight division is kind of a mess right now. I mean, of all the divisions, I feel like the welterweight one is kind of so open. It's so open for anybody to come in and really just put a run together and do something.
Yeah, that's very true. So speaking about this MSU card, right now it's not full yet, but it still has some really cool fights on there. We've got Derek Lewis versus Blakoy Ivanov. Blakoy, man, this guy, he's just showing and proving himself to not be overlooked. Like, you think, oh, he looks old or he looks this and that, but he comes there to fight and he's very dominant. It was what he beat Tai Tuivasa in his last fight. What was that before? I'm blanking on that one, but I mean, I've really looked him in a ways, but he's showing that he's a bad motherfucker. And then Derek Lewis, it's kind of like, iffy with that one sometimes. Like, you never know if he's just going to bring it or, he's going to be dominated. But it still, I think, makes a really great matchup where anything can happen right there. What I'm really excited for is the return of Johnny Walker. He's going to be on that card as well versus Corey Anderson. And here's the thing that gets with that fight. So I've wanted Walker to, climb up the rankings, and I like, the trajectory he's been on, just working his way, not getting that immediate shot right away, but then I wanted him to fight someone ranked eventually, and Corey Anderson's a good one, and Corey Anderson gave him some problems, but the thing about this that I almost could even favor Corey more now is that Walker injuring himself, and I think he's still having problems with it. I'm hearing his shoulder surgery and stuff like that. Like, he's not really throwing. I think it was on his right shoulder or something. He's not really striking or shooting from punching with his right.
Is this from that flip that he did, that celebratory thing in the octagon?
Yeah, his last fight, and it's so disappointing because that dude probably would have fought
twice,
two to 3 or 4 times.
That's crazy, man. Well, that's what we talked about too. It's like, oh my god, this guy's going to hurt himself, like, and put himself out of action. I don't know. I mean, Corey Anderson's no joke, man. The guy just, he picked up wins over Latifi and Teixeira. I mean, it's, he's got some losses in there too, but Latifi is no joke. He's really not.
No. And Corey's faces adversity in the division, but he's made quick turnarounds and proving that he's, still a liable contender. But like I said, I mean, I can see, of course, Johnny Walker just getting it done quickly in the first round like he usually does, and Corey's been knocked out, of course. But, there's just something where you put on the whole injury thing and stuff like that. Kind of, I just want to, I don't know if we're going to see, Walker perform to his best. It's just, hopefully it hasn't ruined his whole career because of that mistake he's
So,
made.
but that's the thing, man. It's always that little bizarre, kind of weird, just non-contact kind of thing that does it. But I don't know. I do want to go before we start talking about the fights in the fall. I do want to go over some other stuff for this coming weekend. Obviously, with the Cowboy Gaethje fight.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about. Obviously, after the Poirier-Habib fight, McGregor kind of just chirped a little bit, like book my rematch from Moscow, and then Gaethje hit him back with pretty much your piece of shit. So shut the fuck up. What I don't know, man. What do you think that like this is the thing too, right? You figure Cowboy, Gaethje, they're up there. They're obviously like the 4 and 5s. So this fight between them should have some implications as far as the title picture goes. But do you feel like this is the same type of thing where it's like that Masvidal Diaz fight has implications over a title shot? I mean, do you feel like McGregor? Do you feel like Gaethje or Cerrone? Like, say let's say Gaethje gets past Cerrone. Do you feel like McGregor would be next for Gaethje, or do you feel like Gaethje's gonna? I mean, I feel like that guy deserves a title shot.
I think this matchup, if they're not getting the winner, if the winner's not getting Connor, they're gonna fight Dustin probably.
Do you think that Gaethje wants to fight Connor, or he's just kind of? Do you think that tweet is like,
Oh,
"Hey,
oh,
I want to set something"? Well, let me finish.
okay.
Do you think that tweet's like, not that he wants to fight him, because obviously everybody wants to fight Connor, but do you think that tweet's like he really thinks that, like, fuck this guy? Do you think that his focus is really on Connor, or do you think
Oh,
that's just
he's
kind of one of
just
those
focused.
things of trying to get his name out there and trying to get that some interest in that fight to potentially get that fight?
His focus is on he wants Connor. Oh yeah, like
Okay.
he definitely wants to beat the shit out of him. I saw this in this like TMZ video, and TMZ has been really putting out some actual MMA good content. Like,
Yes, unless you're
but
Robbie Lawler. Excuse me, unless you're BJ Penn, rather.
yeah. But yeah, he said like he went on like I think it was like a 3 or 5 minute video just saying like I just I want to beat the living shit out of that guy, like, but he wants that fight, like, he really wants that fight. But like I said, they were talking about like, hey, in Connor's interview, he was saying that, I think, oh, we were going to be set up with Gaethje, and he was like, oh well shit, so even Cowboy was in talks to fight
Yeah.
Connor, so that's why I keep saying I feel the winner deserves that Connor fight. I feel like they both
Well, that's the thing.
promised it.
The reason I
So I
ask
feel,
is because after the Cowboy fight before, McGregor was like, hey, let's book it. And then it was like, oh, yeah, let's do it. So we really were like, oh, we're going to get this fight. So just kind of one of those things that for a little bit, it seemed like, hey, if you tweeted about something, it would come true. And then it kind of tailed off a little bit. So I don't know does Dana want that fight? I don't know. That's the thing about McGregor, man, is that he's such like a wild card now. Whereas a year ago, if we were sitting here, it's such a different kind of thing. It's
well,
a different world.
if you want to take this, by true or not, Connor did say I mean, I don't know if he said possibly or he said I'm sure I will return in this year by December. So I'm thinking, I really don't know. Like after this fight with Cerrone and Gaethje, depending on how quick it goes or if it's a long fight, I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could look at a 6-month medical suspension for either one of them.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know if these guys are going to fight by the end of the year. Again, this is a really quick turnaround, I feel, for these guys because they go to war. But that could happen. That matchup could happen. But like I said, if the Connor thing falls out, I mean, it's almost like we always keep mentioning Connor
He's a
here because
polarizing
in a
figure. He
way,
really is.
he's the monkey.
Yeah.
He's the monkey wrench, dude. When he throws himself in the division, everything gets stirred up. So let's say he's not. Let's get him out of the picture real quick. Like I was saying earlier, then I would say I don't think this Cerrone and Gaethje fight is like the Masvidal Nate Diaz fight that could set them up for the title. I feel with this one, really, it would be like it would be a fight with Dustin
Yeah.
because then Gaethje can get that rematch if he wins, and I just don't think that'd be really the next fight to them fighting Nabi. But what was I going to say? This is crazy. You might have to back me up on this a little bit. This is going to be Cerrone's 4th fight in 1 year.
Yeah, man. He is the hardest working fighter in the UFC by far.
4 fights, like that's over the top. Like putting your body through training camps and the damage he takes in these fights. Like okay, two fights a year. That's reasonable, but like 3 or 4, sheesh. Like
the dude's
he's
literally the fight with Gaethje is his 50th professional fight.
Oh my god!
Professional fight. I mean, the guy's 36 years old. He's kind of getting up there a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like he's
This is why I mentioned that real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but the reason why I mentioned that's like is going to be his 4th fight in the octagon this year is like, wow, are we going to see like a fresh Cerrone in there? Like after all the the camps he's going through, the damage in the fights, 4 fights in 1 year. Like how is that going to play out in a fight like this when Gaethje, is a damn zombie coming at you?
Well, I mean. So obviously, like the Hernandez fight and the Ferguson fights were early fights. The the Iaquinta fight was 5 rounds, but I mean, it's I don't know. It's really not. I feel like that's just who Cowboy is. Like I feel like if he's not fighting 3 times a year, then something's wrong. But if he feels good and he's ready to go, he's going to go.
That's a good point.
I really don't think that it's going to be. I don't think it really makes too much of a difference. I think he knows himself, and I don't know. I just feel like if it was anybody else. But it's Cowboy. Like he's fought 3 or 4 times a year. Always. He's always done that. 2016, 1, 2, 3, 4 fights. 2017, 1, 2, 3, 18, 3 fights. Like that's normal 3 to 4 fights for him.
Yeah, that's true.
He fought 4 times in 2014. Yeah. He fought 4 times in 2015. Fought 4 times in 2016. It's pretty ridiculous. Because you think in 2016, 2017 he fought 3 times, but he fought Masvidal, Lawler, and Till. He lost all 3 times. It's like those are some. And then 2018, who did he fight? Oh, Medeiros, Edwards, and Mike Perry. You know what I mean? It's like the guy doesn't take breaks at all.
But he doesn't care either. He's like he's also another one that's respectful, win or lose. You'll see him with the biggest smile and a laugh.
Hey man, not for nothing. I wouldn't mind seeing a Ferguson Cowboy rematch because just the way that fight ended, is.
The thing about that fight, this is my statement or my standpoint on it after it happened. I was like, that was almost the best way it could have happened.
Yeah,
because it was the worst. It was the worst outcome, I guess. But it was, or not.
Nobody
the worst
got
outcome,
knocked out.
Like
nobody got iced out.
Nobody got knocked
starched.
Cowboy didn't like. I mean, he was losing the fight, but he didn't like it finished and stuff like that. And Ferguson continued his streak. He got him back in line for the title shot. I love and respect those guys so much. I was excited for the fight for a while, and then as it kind of neared more, I was like, I don't even want to see. It was kind of like how I was with Cormier and Stipe.
You don't want to. You want to see the fight, but at the same time, you don't want to see someone have to lose. Like if there's a way that they could both win,
that was my thought. The first fight was Stipe and Cormier, but then when that fight happened, I was still nervous, but then like the aftermath, seeing how DC became double champ, it really changed his life and for the better and added to his legacy. So then when the second rematch came around, I was kind of like okay with it, and these guys kind of like had a little bit more back and forth, and there was a little bit, a little bit more. Not as friendliness as before.
Yeah. Well, since we're going to start wrapping this up kind of soon, got a couple of minutes left here. So it's kind of a good transition talking about just these different people and what we think and our feelings. Because it's, we've sat here for almost an hour and just kind of talked about these guys like they're essentially video game characters, just kind of plug this guy into this and plug this guy into that. But I think it's a good idea to kind of touch upon just what we're really trying to get out of this podcast. It's so easy just to sit there and talk about. I always refer back to the Francis fight, Francis versus Lewis, and how people, essentially booed them out of the building. But it's so easy to get caught up in the fact that, oh my God, this is ridiculous. This is the worst fight I've ever seen. It's a lot harder just to kind of realize that, what? They're both human beings. These are two guys that are standing in front of each other, putting their health, sometimes even their lives on the line. And the mental aspect of things is something that we cannot underestimate. We cannot under talk about. Just the fact that you never know what someone's going through. That mentalness. That there's so many emotions and so much pressure and anxieties on these guys, and it's really easy to get caught up not thinking of them as humans with with those things that they deal with. So, if anything, I think that obviously we talk about results, we talk about this fighter, what's next, and things like that. But I think that if we have, at least personally for myself, I know we share the same kind of thing. If we have a goal, it's just to try to get someone who's listening to really, what, we're not asking you to say, hey, you know what, that fight sucked. What we are asking you to do is say, you know what, maybe let me try to appreciate this as a person. Let me try to appreciate this guy as a human being that sacrificed time with his family, money, all these different things that they have to do as a fighter, and just look at them as a human. Look at him as someone who's maybe just had a bad day. It just happens to be in an octagon in front of 20,000 people. The difference is if you have a bad day, you're in your car, you might cry a little bit before work. You don't have a guy that's across the ring that's trying to take your head off, that could hit you and essentially take away your livelihood. So it's just important for us, I think, as a podcast, just for myself, to kind of humanize things a little bit and maybe kind of connect that human side of them as a fighter to us as a fan, because I think that sometimes it gets lost.
Yeah, I mean that's what this podcast is going to be about. Like we're really trying to spread awareness. Really highlight. Not just like you said the results, but what happens outside the cage that can even affect performances or even heighten performances. That things they go and struggles and stuff they go through their lives. Plays a great impact on their
Sure.
mental game. And it's just like on the lead up to these fights, the weight cutting. It's just like people go, crazy if they, miss it by a pound or something like that. I can see some viewpoints with that. When certain fighters, like the actual professional fighters, can have more of a say in it.
Sure.
I feel when they're like, hey, you need to come here and cut weight professionally, but like as an outsider, just not as a pro fighter, but as a fan, there's things that happen along the way where you
Sure.
make it, and then you just see these guys really putting their bodies on the line.
Right.
Like it's crazy. I mean, it's good to hear that we haven't gotten a tragedy in the UFC, like a death and stuff like that.
It's so easy. I mean, this is the thing. We're not trying to sit here and tell people you have to be an MMA fighter to comment on MMA. It's not like, oh, well, you haven't played professional football, so you can't have an opinion on professional football. No, we get the fact that, listen, you're a fan. We get it. You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want. We're not trying to change that and say, if you think a fight sucked, you can't say a fight sucked. All we're trying to say is, you know what? Think that fight sucked, but that's the thing too. There's a difference between thinking something and then going after someone on Twitter or social media or Instagram. And like, for perfect example, Poirier, that dude was emotional after that fight, man. That goes to show you what he put into training for that fight and then fighting that fight emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially, everything. And what did he say? He's let himself down. And it's just important to kind of recognize the fact that they're not just video game characters. They're not just people that, they're fighting. There's so many other aspects of something. Like when you're seeing them in the ring or in the octagon, rather, standing across from each other, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. You're not seeing the majority of what went into that. You're not seeing the huge part of it that's that's not visible to the eye that they had to go through to even get to that point. So if anything, we're just trying to say we want you guys to be a little more understanding and just realize the fact that there's a lot that goes into that, and we hope that people can appreciate it like we do.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's what I was just mentioning right there. Was like I'm hoping that whatever fans we can get for this pod that listen, if they've ever been in that like mindset, even like a troll, where they they just trash on these fighters, or they even just had those thoughts in their head. I feel like I'm hoping that we can some way change their viewpoint on MMA and even just the UFC. But I've been in that position. When I first started watching, I didn't respect it as much. But like the more you watch, the more you see these interviews, the stories, and getting into their background, you really like it really changes you. And I can say for a fact, ever since I've been watching MMA, like each year, even each month, each day, like it's improved my mindset. It's made me, a stronger and respectful person. So
Sure.
yeah, that's what we're just trying to touch up on right there. It's like,
Yeah.
we want you guys to become aware and stuff like that. And we even want to mention about like the smaller fights that no one talks about, because of course we just talked about the big fights here, but we also want to touch up on smaller fighters. And here's the thing I want to say to close off this podcast is that we want to give out of course our social media handles, but here's this little cool spin-off show that I'm doing. It's called the MMA Minute, all one word. You can find it on Instagram and Twitter. And what I'm going to start doing is what I do is, so far now, I haven't done much. I've only done it for UFC Shenzhen, but I'm going to analyze the event, the preview the event, then preview each fighter, or like the two main ones that are fighting. But what I want to start doing is, like, for fights like this, like after UFC 242, which I'm going to start posting up after this podcast, is that I want to highlight the other fighters that I saw on this card, like the prelims and early prelims, and talking about like the great finishes and stuff. Just talking about like, hey, I want to see this fight next. What they've been talking about, the stuff that you don't really hear because it gets
lost in the crowd of everything else. MMA is a huge thing. There's a lot of people that have a lot of passions on it. The only thing is we can just say, like, we hope you guys like what you hear and you'll join us every week listening, and we can discuss one of our obviously greatest passions. And make sure to follow us on social media, Twitter, ask questions. If you guys have any insights, feel free to discuss. It's an open forum for us. We're happy to take questions, happy to take opinions, and kind of go over them too. So.
Hell yeah, man. So yeah, my handle is at B3NN_draws. It's my on Instagram and Twitter.
And you want to go ahead and give the Draw and Brawl handle for Twitter too?
Yeah, that's at draw, and then the letter N, and then BRAWL.
That's Draw and Brawl. So give us a follow. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
Hey, Dave, you got to say your handle, my guy.
I'm just at DaveJF3. I just wanted to focus on the Draw and Brawl thing for now, and then we get to build that up a little bit, and then people can, if you give a shit about what I'm up to, fine. But obviously, Draw and Brawl is something that we want to try to get,
That's the thing I want to say real quick about that is that, of course, we've highlighted a lot of fighting here, but the reason why it's called Draw and Brawl is because we're two illustrators passionate about MMA, but we think the art world and MMA kind of go hand in hand. You can see relations in that, but also
pursuing a passion.
Yeah, exactly. So there's going to be more meaning to why it's called Draw and Brawl, not just to promote us as artists. Of course, that's why I'm not saying, hey, at the end, let's promote our handles and stuff like that. But I mean, like, we're going to take it to different depths. And right now I'm going to be posting up Stipe Miocic, drawing. I'm doing UFC illustrations, but I do other stuff too. But that's another thing I want to show. Like, I'm going to show a lot of appreciation to these fighters by, drawing them, and especially when they, win a fight. So I'm going to be posting a lot of stuff like that, UFC related. But we also want to connect it even more. There's chances we're going to have podcasts where it's just going to be talking about art, or we'll have a live stream while we're watching a fight or talking fights, drawing. So we're not just one dimensional with this. We're not just talking about fights. So
it's a podcast that covers all of our passions, art and MMA. Believe it or not, they do go hand in hand, because all the artists that we're friends with are pretty big MMA fans, which is nice, because this podcast is going to be something we're investing a lot of time into. We're lining up guests. We're lining up lots of people with different opinions than ours too, because we find that Ben and we're obviously close friends, but we have a lot of different opinions about things, and that's kind of what makes it fun. It makes it cool that you can kind of be respectful and talk about different stuff, and that's what we're kind of hoping to bring, just another perspective to fighting and to art.
With that being said, guys,
thanks for listening to Draw and Brawl. I'm Dave.
I'm Ben.
We'll catch you next time.
Draw and Brawl on.